So if you found this video, or I should say if this video found you, one thing is clear to me. You are either questioning in general what ADHD is. It's a so-called disorder, but you've been questioning that, or you had yourself or a child diagnosed recently and you're struggling with this idea of applying that disorder label to yourself or your child. And so I just want you to know that you're not alone. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, even if subconsciously or secretly questioning what this thing called ADHD is, or questioning what this disorder label, what it means to have it, to apply it to yourself, to what I call stigmatize yourself, or allowing to be stigmatized in a sense, and I'll explain more about that. But if you're here and this video has found you, relax, take a deep breath. I can tell you that 9 years ago, when our own son, at the age of 7, got diagnosed, and I always say we had him diagnosed because I really wanted to know, like, what is the Western, mostly, narrative around this so-called disorder? And so 9 years ago, I started a research project called ADHD is Over. It started with a documentary film. It has become a podcast and now a book. The book is available in mid-July, and I will be posting about that. I will be doing some readings from certain chapters in the book, do videos on that. But for now, I just want you to know that there is a source here for you to come to. If you're looking for a wedge to put in between a diagnosis and your next action. And it's very important as a parent, I can tell you, when we first got the diagnosis, it was overwhelming, it was confusing, it was shocking, it was upsetting, it was all of these emotions handed to us at once. And I wish someone would have handed me the book that I just finished writing that will be out in July, ADHD is Over. I wish someone would have handed me a book like that, that said, look, there's a standard narrative. You can go to Google or nowadays AI and you can ask, what is ADHD and what are the treatments for ADHD? And you'll get the very sort of standard narrative answers. And I will just say that for me, that was just intuitively not enough. It was like, I'm not buying this. This can't be it. It felt incomplete. And it also felt evidently very one-sided. And so I started to dig deeper. I started to read books from Tom Hartman's Hunter and a Farmer's World, to Gabor Mate's Scattered Minds, to other books that were like, look, this might not be a disorder. This might either be a genetic advantage, a skill that's been activated as part of your human operating system. This, they say it's genetic, but it's really not genetic. Epigenetics has proven that you're never predetermined to have ADHD. If someone in your family had it, you were predisposed, but never predetermined, which means you have an enormous amount of power, and with power comes responsibility to actually, heal yourself. And I hate to use the word heal, but I will not use it again. I just wanted to say it here once. You can dissolve your symptoms, which means, in essence, you can rewire your brain and change your behaviors such that you no longer have that much friction between you and the world, so that there's a need to label you with anything, right? That's kind of, in a nutshell, what I found out. And there's a nervous system that, we get triggered as children. There's a wound that happens when we don't feel safe, when we want to check out, because as little children, fight and flight doesn't exist. We don't fight, we don't flight. Often we can't, most of the time we can't, but we can check out, right? We can be absent-minded. We can dream of a better time than now. We can dream of a better place than here when we feel unsafe, when we're threatened. And if that happens repeatedly with children, the brain gets wired that way. Hence, suddenly there's a certain wiring that produces a certain behavior. And now we see a child and go, oh, they're always checked out, or they're too hyperactive, or they're always impulsive. They must have ADHD. And then we label, then we diagnose, we give medication, which is a medical Band-Aid, and we essentially postpone the issues, the healing to be happening later when they're adults. That's what's happening. So if you're in that boat, I'm with you in that boat. If you're in that book, I'm with you on the same page in the same book. Questioning ADHD is important. Why? Because when we apply a disorder label to a young person who has no choice, we're stigmatizing them. Later, we think other people are stigmatizing our child or someone with ADHD, but I always say you cannot be stigmatized unless you stigmatize yourself first. So more about that in my book, ADHD is Over. But for now, I just wanted to do a video. This is my first video. I usually just have my podcasts that show up on YouTube. But enough parents, people have asked me to do videos. So here we go. This is the first video in the series. And I just want to say one last thing, why this is called ADHD is Over, because I wanted it to be a positive declaration from the future. Much like John Lennon and Yoko Ono's War is Over during the Vietnam War era, they wanted to say war is over if you want it. I'm saying ADHD is over if we want it to be. The label doesn't have to exist. The struggle is real. I never question the struggles. People do struggle. There is a certain friction between an individual and their environment, their world, right? That's real, no doubt. But the label doesn't have to be. There's actually more harm done with a mental disorder label than people tend to believe. People have sort of brainwashed themselves to believe that the label is actually positive. Well, because now I know what's wrong with me and now I can get help, right? Look, I see it, I get it. But if you did more research on the negative psychological harm of labels, which I also go into in my book, you will see that there's actually no benefit to labeling yourself or your child with a mental disorder label such as ADHD. There isn't. We think there is, we've been told there is, but I guarantee you, if you listen to my podcasts, listen to my interviews with my experts that I've had the pleasure to interview, if you read my book, I hope you get this wedge that you can put between the diagnosis and your first action as a parent. Because it's really crucial what you do next when a diagnosis happens, or when it's sort of like, we think he has ADHD, we think she has ADHD. I feel, first of all, ADHD is not an emergency. So this is a pause that I invite you to take. A pause to do more research, to look beyond the narrative, the mainstream narrative, right? To dig deeper than just the first few search results on Google pages or AI, chat responses. Go deeper. Use logic, use intuition, and use research, and go beyond most scientific studies that are touted to be the study that has proven that ADHD is genetic. If you really read the studies and you really see what they're saying and what they're not saying, and that a lot of these things are models, right? They're representations of facts. If you see that, you see more clearly that there's more than meets the eye. That ADHD is not a medical disorder. It's a psychological disorder. Medical disorders are discovered. And it's not subjective, it's objective. And psychiatric disorders or psychological disorders are invented. They are voted on by chosen members of that community. Just like the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of the United States, that's become sort of the international Bible, if you will, on mental disorders. It was voted on by 13 to 14, 15 people in a room, voted on which disorder should be in the DSM and what symptoms should be going along with this disorder, right? So that's invented. Whereas a medical disorder, a true medical disorders like diabetes, for example, is discovered. There's a difference. There are medical tests or blood tests for diabetes, not for ADHD. So I just want to say that because some of these pro-medication, pro-disorder experts always compare ADHD to diabetes. Oh, it's like diabetes. And then once you have your shot, then you're fine. So take your medications, then you're fine. That's like comparing apples to kale. Yeah, they're both green. but it's not the same thing. A medical disorder is not the same as a psychological disorder. And so distinctions like that I go into in my book because it's very important that we scrutinize these things, because we're told so many times as parents that this is safe and effective. I know that rings a bell. And I don't want to get political, I don't want to get into COVID, but there's a lot of safe and effective talk out there still in the medical or scientific community. Remember in the 50s when doctors said it's safe and effective, essentially, to smoke, right? It's not dangerous. They smoked in advertisements, you know. Imagine if we had just taken that for the truth. Don't question it. Why are you questioning the guys in the white lab coats or the women in the white lab coats? Why are you questioning medicine, right? Well, we have every right as a parent to question because A, we know our children better than any expert. Also, we're the parent, we're responsible. And if we're just going to go ahead with the mainstream narrative and do what we're told, then we are the ones that, and our children have to live with the consequences. So you damn right, I'm going to question certain things. And being a questioner shouldn't be frowned upon. I actually love and admire and applaud parents who are questioners, who go, wait a minute, what's in this food? Or what's in this medication? Or is this really safe? Can you point me towards the studies that say it's safe? And can you, show me some videos? I want to see some stuff, right? We have every right to do that. And I think we've been told to be quiet for too long. And so this movement, ADHD is over, is for conscious parents who are like, hey, I've always felt there was something off when it comes to this disorder, right? To call it an epidemic, that suddenly there's so many kids with ADHD and oh my God, and we got to do something about it. It's like, it's not an epidemic. It's explainable beyond, God must be just continuously make broken children and therefore there's just more of them, right? So don't want to get into that now, but I hope you follow and subscribe, whatever you can do to support this video, this channel, to get the message out. If you're in this camp, if you think there's more than meets the eye, if you question the disorder, the validity, the diagnosis, the taking medication, the labeling, all of that, if you have some question about all of these topics, I got lots of answers, and I don't have the absolute truth on anything. I always say that. I stay open for things to change and for me to adapt. Whereas a lot of the pro-medication, pro-disorder experts always pretend that the results are in, that they know better, that you do not question science or medicine. And I just think that is complete hypocrisy. That is ignorance, and it is righteousness. And a lot of these experts are on the payroll from big pharma. So there's a conflict of interest. Anyway, enough said for this video. There'll be more videos. Thanks for watching, and I hope you're back soon. Cheers.